Ever felt like you're just running full speed into a brick wall?
Yeah.
You're putting in the hours, the effort, the sheer will, but progress feels, well, glacial.
Oh, definitely.
That moment where you seriously question if you should keep pushing or maybe just cut your losses. It's such a common challenge, right? Whether you're learning something new, starting a project, changing careers.
Absolutely. And that very crossroads, that decision point,
Yeah,
that's exactly what we're diving deep into today.
precisely.
Huh.
Because we've got this compact but pretty powerful little book in our sights, Seth Godin's The Dip, a little book that teaches you when to quit and when to stick.
Yeah, it's a really focused look at a critical part of success.
Yeah.
And for this analysis, we're mainly looking at the info from its Amazon page,
Yeah.
the editorial reviews, what readers thought, and a bit about Seth Godin himself.
Right. So our mission today is kind of twofold. First, to really get our heads around the core ideas in the dip. How can it help us, as learners, as doers, make smarter choices about sticking with things versus strategically bailing?
Mhm.
And second, we want to dig into who Seth Godin actually is. What's his background? What shapes his thinking?
Sounds like a plan.
Okay, let's get into it. So what's the fundamental idea Godin is putting forward in the dip?
Well, the central concept really is that pretty much any significant endeavor, anything actually worthwhile, hits a point where it stops being fun and easy. Progress seems to stall.
Hmm.
The initial buzz wears off, and it just becomes hard work.
Uh-huh.
That period, that slog, that's the dip. It's the sustained effort you need between starting out all excited and actually getting good or seeing a real payoff.
Okay, yeah. Like learning guitar. First chords are fun then.
Exactly. Then your fingers hurt, progress feels painfully slow, practicing scales is just tedious. That plateau, that less enjoyable bit, that's the dip right there.
That rings so true. We've all hit that slump, right? Where the shine wears off and it feels like you're just wading through mud, like learning a language and hitting that grammar wall, or a business that struggles after the launch.
Precisely. But what Godin argues, and this is key, is that successfully navigating this dip is what separates those who ultimately make it from those who don't.
Okay.
And he offers it's somewhat counterintuitive idea. The most successful people, they aren't always the ones who never quit. Often, they're the best at quitting the wrong things at the right time.
Huh. That really pushes back against that whole never give up, never surrender idea we hear all the time. It suggests quitting can actually be strategic.
That's exactly it, strategic quitting. And he draws a contrast between the dip and two other scenarios you might find yourself in.
Okay.
First, there's what he calls the cul-de-sac. That's where you pour an effort, maybe for years, but you just never see any real improvement. It's basically a dead end. You're spinning your wheels.
Right, just stuck.
Yeah. And then there's the cliff. This is where things might be going great, maybe even soaring for a while. And then, boom, sudden catastrophic failure. Things fall off sharply.
Okay. So the real skill then is figuring out which situation you're actually in. Is this a dip where pushing through leads to reward, or am I stuck in a cul-de-sac just wasting energy? Or worse, heading for a cliff without realizing it?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? That discernment is crucial. And interestingly, Godin suggests that winners, the people who really excel, they actively seek out dips in the areas they want to dominate.
Wait, seek them out. Why would anyone want the hard part? That sounds masochistic.
Huh. Well, not quite. The logic is that the dip itself acts as a powerful barrier to entry. It's the phase where most people get discouraged, they lose steam, they quit.
Oh, okay.
So, consequently, if you have the grit, the resources, the strategy to push through that dip and come out the other side, you suddenly find yourself in a much smaller, more elite group.
Right, less competition.
Exactly. And the rewards, profits, recognition, expertise, long-term security, they tend to be disproportionately larger because so few people made it through.
Okay, that makes sense. The difficulty filters people out.
Precisely. Think about it for you, the listener. If you're trying to master something really complex, that challenging dip means fewer people will actually achieve that mastery. So the knowledge itself becomes more valuable. Your skills become more valuable.
So we should almost reframe the struggle. Instead of a sign to stop, maybe it's a sign that we're onto something potentially valuable because it's difficult.
That's a big part of his argument. The struggle itself signals potential scarcity and therefore potential value. It's not just about having grit. It's about understanding that the hard path is often the less crowded one, leading to bigger payoffs.
That's a really useful perspective shift. Okay, so let's talk more about this quitting idea. It's definitely not something we usually celebrate.
No, it's not. But Godin really champions what he calls strategic quitting. He argues for making conscious, deliberate decisions to walk away from things, projects, jobs, maybe even hobbies that are unlikely to lead to you being truly exceptional, and crucially, doing it without feeling guilty.
Right, letting go of the guilt.
Yeah, he directly challenges that standard wisdom, quitters never win.
Which is everywhere, so ingrained.
Totally.
Yeah.
But Godin's point is, if you look at something you're doing and you realize you're just average at it,
Yeah.
and you're likely to stay average, you basically have two smart choices.
Okay.
Choice one, strategically quit. Cut your losses, free up your time and energy, and redirect those resources towards something where you genuinely have a shot at being outstanding.
And choice two.
Choice two, commit. Double down. Decide you will push through the dip, overcome the obstacles, and become truly exceptional in that area.
So quit or be exceptional.
Pretty much. What he argues against is staying stuck in the middle, in mediocrity. He thinks that's rarely fulfilling and almost never the path to significant success. There was actually a customer quote someone pulled out that echoed this: average is for losers.
Wow, okay. That's blunt. But it makes the point clearly. So the big challenge then is telling the difference. How do we know if we're in a dip worth pushing through or just stuck in that cul-de-sac, banging our heads against a wall?
Yeah, and that's where it gets tricky, honestly. The book offers advice, frameworks for thinking about it, tips for finding and leveraging dips, guidelines for quitting confidently.
Yeah.
But some readers, looking at the reviews, felt it was a bit light on concrete, real-world examples to really illustrate how to tell these scenarios apart in practice.
I can see that. It's one thing to understand the concept, another to apply it to your own messy situation.
Right. It's a fair criticism. Abstract ideas always land better with tangible stories. Maybe we can think of it like this. A dip usually feels like a temporary slowdown or like the difficulty is ramped up, but you can still see, maybe faintly, a path towards improvement and reward if you stick with it.
Okay, there's still a sense of potential progress, even
Yeah.
if it's hard.
Yeah. Whereas a cul-de-sac, that feels more like fundamental stagnation. You put in the effort, but nothing really changes. Maybe the market isn't there, or you lack a key skill, or the structure is just wrong. There's a lack of upward potential. Does that distinction resonate?
It does, yeah. The dip feels like climbing a steep hill. The cul-de-sac feels like being on a treadmill that isn't actually going anywhere.
Good analogy.
Okay, let's pivot slightly. How did the critics and actual readers receive the book? What did the editorial reviews highlight?
Well, Publishers Weekly had some interesting takes. They called the dip smart, honest, and refreshingly free of self-help posturing. It's quite positive.
Yeah, free of posturing is good.
Right. They also noted its tone as motivational and comically indifferent, which is a funny combination. And they really nailed a key message. We fail when we get distracted by tasks. We don't have the guts to quit.
That's powerful. So our inability to let go of the wrong things actually holds us back from succeeding at the right things.
Exactly. It dilutes our focus, our energy, our resources, like trying to carry too much baggage uphill.
Makes sense. What else?
Entrepreneur.com apparently called it a short read that should be on every entrepreneur's book list, which highlights its value for people starting or running businesses, a group that definitely faces a lot of dips. And Chris Anderson, who wrote The Long Tail, another really influential book, he described the dip as absolutely delightful. He praised the mix of Godin's wise aphorisms and anecdotes with these darkly brilliant business card cartoons by Hugh MacLeod that are apparently in the book.
Oh, cartoons too. Interesting. So the experts seem to appreciate its directness, its thought-provoking core message, and its conciseness.
Yeah, that seems fair. Short, impactful, makes you think.
And what about the regular readers, the customer reviews? What was the general vibe there?
Generally pretty positive, too. Lots of people found it a quick read, very to the point, but packed with effective information. They liked the compelling argument for strategic quitting. Words like insightful, easy to understand, valuable for money came up often.
Sounds good. Any criticisms?
There were some mixed opinions on the writing style, for instance. Some loved the witty, punchy style. Others found it maybe a bit hyperbolic or felt the organization could be tighter.
Okay, stylistic preferences.
Yeah. And that point we mentioned earlier kept coming up, the desire for more concrete examples, more how-to in telling a dip from a cul-de-sac. Some felt it lacked a bit of practical depth there.
Right, the application challenge.
Exactly. And one person even specifically mentioned being skeptical about some visuals, calling them fake math graphs that didn't seem based on real data. Just illustrations, perhaps.
Huh. Okay, so maybe a bit more style than substance for some readers, or at least a desire for more substance to back up the style.
Potentially, yeah. But even with those critiques, it seems the core message that strategic quitting is powerful, that never quitting isn't always the best advice, really landed with a lot of people.
It's definitely a sticky idea.
It is. That quote, average is for losers, really sums up the high-stakes Godin attaches to this. Either push through to excellence or have the courage to quit and aim for excellence elsewhere. Don't just linger in the middle.
It's memorable, you have to give him that.
Definitely. It delivers a punchy, actionable thought, even if some wanted more hand-holding on the execution.
Okay, so we've got a good handle on the dip itself. Let's talk about the author, Seth Godin. He's a pretty big name, especially in business and marketing circles, right?
Oh, absolutely. Hugely influential. He's a prolific business blogger, one of the most popular, and has written a whole string of best-selling books that have genuinely changed how people think about marketing, leadership, the way change happens. The dip is just one piece of that puzzle.
Right, you mentioned some others earlier. Permission marketing, Purple Cow, Tribes, Linchpin. This is marketing the practice. That's a serious body of work.
It really is. He's built this reputation for challenging the status quo, offering fresh takes, often quite counterintuitive, on how business and really how engagement works in the modern world.
And he founded squidoo.com that has that
Let's-
blog.
Yep, founded Squidoo, which is quite popular. And his blog is legendary. Apparently, you can just search Seth on Google, and it pops right up. It's incredible, widely read.
Wow. And he's not just an academic or a writer, right?
Yeah.
He's actually been in the trenches.
Correct. He was VP of direct marketing at Yahoo for a while. That was back in the late 90s after Yahoo bought his startup, Yoyodyne.
Okay, so he's seen it from the startup side and the big corporate side.
Exactly. Which definitely lends credibility to his insights on strategy and making these kinds of quit or stick decisions. He's also known as a real pioneer in online education. He founded the Alt MBA, which is a highly regarded intensive workshop.
So theory and practice. Seems like he covers both.
Definitely seems that way. And his reach is massive. 20 international bestsellers, translated into over 38 languages. That tells you his ideas resonate across cultures.
That's incredible. Any major awards or recognition?
Oh yeah, he's been inducted into the Marketing Hall of Fame, the Direct Marketing Hall of Fame, and the Guerrilla Marketing Hall of Fame. That's a lot of halls of fame.
No kidding. Clearly respected by his peers.
Massively. And it goes way back. One of his early ebooks, Unleashing the Idea Virus, was apparently like the most popular ebook ever published at one point, way back when ebooks were new. And Purple Cow. People still talk about that. It was considered the best-selling marketing book of its decade. Really shifted thinking about how to stand out.
He sounds like someone who's consistently been ahead of the curve.
That seems to be his brand. And he keeps evolving. More recently, he was involved as a volunteer founding editor for something called the Carbon Almanac, focusing on climate change. So his interests clearly go beyond just marketing tactics.
That's interesting. So if listeners want to find out more about him and his work.
His personal website, sethgodin.com, is the main hub. The Amazon bio mentions it. You can find his blog, links to his books, info on his projects there.
Great. Okay, let's bring this all back home. For our audience, the learner, people trying to get better, build things, navigate their careers, how can understanding the dip and Godin's ideas really help them?
I think the core value is about becoming more deliberate, more strategic, with your most valuable resource, your time and energy.
Okay. How so?
Well, first, just recognizing that dips are normal, that significant achievements usually involve pushing through tough periods. That alone can give you the resilience to keep going when things get hard, when maybe others would give up.
Right. It normalizes the struggle.
Exactly. But second, and maybe even more importantly, embracing strategic quitting. That frees you. It helps you avoid the sunk cost fallacy, throwing good energy after bad, just because you've already invested so much.
Yeah, that's a hard trap to avoid.
It is. But if you can learn to cut your losses on things that are clearly cul-de-sacs, things unlikely to lead to great results, you free up all those resources, time, money, focus, to pour into the areas where you do have a real shot at excellence.
So it's about smarter allocation, being intentional about where you fight your battles.
Precisely. Godin talks a lot about striving to be the best in the world. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean literally the #1 globally, but the best in your chosen niche, your market, your community.
The best available option for a specific group.
Right. And by strategically quitting the things where you'll only ever be mediocre, you give yourself the bandwidth to actually focus on becoming that best in the world in the areas that truly matter to you, where your talents can shine. That's where the big rewards and the real satisfaction lie, according to him.
That makes a lot of sense. Focus your fire. Okay, as we start to wrap up this deep dive, what are the absolute key takeaways we should hold on to from the dip and Seth Godin?
Okay, I'd say four main things. First, the dip. Remember, it's that tough but often necessary stretch between starting and succeeding. It's normal.
Got it. Dip is normal.
Second, winners quit. Or rather, the most successful people are often masters of strategic quitting. They know when to cut bait on the wrong things.
Strategic quitting is smart.
Third, know the difference. It's absolutely crucial to try and figure out if you're in a dip worth pushing through, a cul-de-sac, a dead end, or facing a cliff, imminent drop. That diagnosis matters.
Dip, cul-de-sac, cliff, tell them apart.
And finally, Seth Godin himself offers this really compelling, maybe provocative perspective on perseverance versus quitting. He makes you rethink the value of sticking it out versus the power of letting go.
Rethink grit in quitting. Okay, solid takeaways.
Mm-hmm.
So here's maybe a final thought for you, our listener, to chew on. Take a minute and think about an area in your life right now, work, learning, a personal project where you're really facing a challenge, hitting some resistance.
Yeah.
Ask yourself, based on what we've talked about, does this feel like a dip? A tough climb, but with potential on the other side. A climb worth making for you. Or could it possibly be a cul-de-sac? Are you putting in effort without real forward momentum, without a genuine chance of breakthrough? Is it time to maybe strategically redirect that energy?
It's a tough question.
It is.
Yeah.
And maybe think about Godin's idea. What does being the best in the world actually look like for you in your context? And what strategic decisions, including maybe quitting something, might help you get closer to that? Something to really mull over.